Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, going to be taking a look at 5 brawlers which I think deserve a big buff, and then 5 brawlers which I believe deserve a huge nerf. So probably won't be balance changes for a few weeks because we've got the world finals coming up, but I just think these are some brawlers that are really annoying me on ladder, or I just feel like need a little bit of love. So before we jump into it, make sure you're using the crate code in the shop. That'd be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so firstly, going to be talking about the buffs and starting off with Byron. So Byron is a brawler which has always been at the top of the meta, so at least it's a little bit nice seeing him near the bottom, but I think he's really bad right now. I feel like people are still overrating him a little bit. I'm looking at the stats as well, looking at competitive, even looking at ladder on multiple Brawl websites, and Byron seems like he's always the worst win rate brawler and also one of the worst use rate brawlers. So it goes to show that even at the lower end of ladder, Byron just absolutely stinks. The main reason is because he hasn't got really many ways to defend himself. It takes such a long time to really get his reload speed going. Of course, that got nerfed like a couple of months ago. It went from a 1.3 seconds to 1.6 seconds, so that's a huge nerf because a lot of times he'll just constantly be spamming shots, and it was really easy to hit shots consistently with Byron, right? Also, you have a nerf to his supercharge rate a long time ago. These nerfs really hurt him, so I think one of two things. I think just maybe buff his reload speed a little bit, or literally give him the reload speed gear, because that would literally reverse back the previous balance change, right? But also you've got the choice of whether you want to take off damage, whether you want to take off shield, because of course he's really squishy and he probably needs the shield gear as well. So yeah, I feel like Byron definitely needs a lot of love. He's one of the worst brawlers right now. Okay, so next up on the buff list we have Sandy. So Sandy is a lot of people's favorite brawler, specifically in Power League. Sandy right now within the meta, it's just terrible. I never see Sandy whatsoever. He used to be a brawler which pretty much all of the time people just seem to pick towards, specifically in Brawl and Gem Grab, but right now I don't see any Sandy whatsoever. Main reason being is because there's so many supers in the game that are a lot better than Sandy's super, considering the value you get with it, right? It takes 7 hits to get your super Sandy's. Still sometimes, even when previously Sandy's super took 5 hits to get, sometimes you might struggle a little bit because people learn to keep their distance, but even more so now, 7 hits is a lot. But I don't think they need to change that. I think they just need to either reverse the damage nerf they did a couple of months ago as well, just because like I feel like it was a bit of overkill. Sandy already was kind of declining in the meta, and then they just nerfed damage even more, and it just made Sandy a really bad brawler. So yeah, I don't really want Sandy to be like at the top of the meta again, because it is pretty toxic, right? Pretty easy brawler to play, but definitely should be at least a viable option. So at least give him a little bit of damage, not talking a lot, just to give him a little bit more firepower in those 1v1s. Okay, so next up on the buff list we have Jessie. So it wouldn't be a Brawl Stars balancing video without talking about a need for a Jessie buff. So Jessie has been absolutely terrible in the meta for such a long time. She's only really had a place in the meta in a certain maps like Parallel Plays, for example, maybe Dueling Beast was a few hot zone maps she was okay in. She used to always be that okay brawler, but as other brawlers around her are getting buffs and several gear changes as well, she's not really benefiting off it. She hasn't really got a place in the meta whatsoever at the moment. You think of the rework to Penny as well, that literally shot Penny from one of the worst brawlers in the game to literally one of the best, being usable pretty much everywhere. Hopefully the same happens with Jessie, because I've always loved Jessie as a brawler, been one of my favorite brawlers except for the cheesy high strategy, right? But I've always liked Jessie, so for me it has to be a couple of changes. Again, I think the projectile speed needs to change with Jessie. It's so easy to dodge shots against a Jessie, specifically if you're in a bush as well. It can be incredibly hard, so increase the projectile speed. I think something exactly like how they changed Penny, right? I feel like that's due to happen soon, right? They're not touching her in terms of balance changes anytime soon, so I feel like a rework is probably imminent in the future. Okay, so next up on the buff list we have Tara. So Tara hasn't had any balance changes for 8 months, but when she did receive a nerf, I think it was only like a 20 damage nerf, something really small, it did make her one of the weaker brawlers within the meta. I felt like she was in a fine place. They nerfed her, probably overkilled her a little bit too much. But then again, I feel like they do this to Sandy and Tara, because these are 2 brawlers that pretty much every player around the mid kind of, I don't know, just outside of Mythic, just kind of stem towards, because Sandy and Tara are pretty easy to play. So I think personally that's probably why they haven't really looked to buff either of those brawlers yet. But I still feel like Tara deserves a lot of love, because whenever I play Power League, or just whenever I'm facing off against other people in Power League, they never pick Tara, literally ever. And Tara has always been that type of brawler which is pretty balanced overall. So Yes, I feel like she definitely deserves a little bit of a buff. Even just reverting that damage change could mean a lot for her. You might actually finally see her in the meta. Okay, and lastly for the buff list, we have this Supercharging gear. So I feel like this gear is actually pretty good on certain brawlers like Lou and Sprout, but some brawlers I feel like it's completely useless or just incredibly underwhelming. So I'm not too sure how they combat this. Maybe they just switch it so the brawler has a different super rare gear or whatever rarity it is, or they think about buffing it, because again I feel like it's a little bit useless. Like El Primo, for example, he only takes one less hit to get his super from 12 hits to 11, which practically I don't think that really changes anything, whereas with other brawlers like Sprout and Lou it really changes a lot. So of course you got to be a little bit careful, because Supercharging gear can probably be a little bit toxic if overbuffed too much, but again it's just completely useless on some brawlers. Think of Edgar, Jackie, Primo, Nanny, even for example, Bonnie, it's completely useless on as well. So there's definitely got to be a middle ground on how they combat this, but then again it's going to be pretty hard because you don't want to overbuff it and make brawlers like El Primo extremely toxic like he used to be in the past. Okay, so firstly on the nerf list, which I feel like needs addressing sooner rather than later, it has to be the reload gear. You guys seem to be raging about it a lot as well. I just feel like in some situations and a lot of maps it's so oppressive. For a 20% reload buff, some brawlers can just infinitely spam. You know, brawlers like Lola, Griff, Rico, these are just such annoying brawlers because of this reload gear. I feel like every single brawler just gets insane value with it every single time. And the main thing about it that annoys me more than maybe other gears or other things is the fact that you get value out of it all of the time. There's no like threshold, you know, like the damage gear where you have to be below 50% HP. You just get value out of it every single time. So not too sure how they go about this. Maybe they can just nerf it from 20% to 15%, or make it so there's a threshold. Say if you have one piece of ammo left, I'm not 100% completely sure how to change this, but they have to change it pretty soon, because brawlers like Amber as well are just so OP with this reload gear. Something needs to happen soon. Alright guys, so moving on to this second nerf, which I feel like needs to happen pretty soon as well. It has to be Otis, right? So you guys are probably wondering, well, you're calling for some buffs some time ago and now I'm calling for some nerfs. Yeah, that is correct, because right now Otis is a brawler which is good literally into everything. I kind of knew this would happen if they overbuffed him. I feel like it just deserves a couple of small nerfs, which will still seem as a decent brawler within the meta, but not as oppressive, because when you get a brawler like Otis, which is good against everything and shuts down tanks so well, it becomes the best brawler. Specifically in Power League, you can first pick him every single time because you know he deals with literally everything really good. So for me, he only deserves two nerfs. So the first one is actually going to be with his gadgets. So the gadget, a little puddle, it doesn't seem OP, but I feel like it's a little bit too oppressive, just because specifically you can hit around walls with it. So either nerf the radius of it or the duration. Only a small nerf, maybe like 3 seconds instead of 4, or just a small radius nerf would be enough. Just again, on some grassy maps is a little bit annoying facing off against that gadget. And then also the second nerf, I think just a small one, something to do with damage, right? Because I feel like it just shreds a little bit too fastly. So maybe like a 40 damage nerf, something really small, might put Otis near the middle of the pack, which I feel like he's deserving of, because he's a super toxic brawler when he's this OP. Okay, so next up on the nerf list we have Griff. So Griff right now in the meta is absolutely insane. So maybe the reload speed gear nerf might actually make it so he's balanced enough, but I still think the main problem with him is his gadget. He gets free uses with that gadget. I don't know whether they're going to completely rework this. I would honestly be all for it, because I think it's still a little bit too cheesy to just press a green button and just break up the map the way you want it to. You've got multiple examples of this in certain Brawl maps where you only need a couple of wall breaks and you can counter pretty much every single composition within a game. I think that's just too incredibly strong. I cast Brawl League at the moment where all the best teams play off in Brawl, and Griff is literally either a first pick or one of the second or third picks, or he's banned out because he just offers too much value with that piggy bank. So for me, he's deserving of a nerf. Maybe nerf, completely rework it, or make it so you only have 2 uses of it. That's not really ideal though, but something needs to happen soon. Okay, so next up on the nerf list, of course, we have B. So another brawler within the meta, just like Otis and Griff, which you can pretty much use everywhere. I think, like, again, her main attack is just way too oppressive. By this I mean is that you can constantly just spam out shots time and time again. It reminds me of what Byron used to feel like in a way, because you could just constantly shoot out and you'll just never be low on ammo. Of course, with B, sure, there's 1 ammo, so it's going to be reloading so quickly. I think it's 0.9 seconds her reload speed is. I don't think they need to nerf it too much, right? Because maybe if you nerf brawlers that really complement her, like Griff, for example. She may not be as strong as she is in the meta because there's just so many wall breaks, and that's why she's so strong, right? Because those wall break brawlers are just so good. But again, her reload speed for the sniper that she is just too quick. Maybe 1 second, maybe 1.1 second might see her a little bit worse off in the meta, and I'm all for it. All right, guys, so jumping into the last nerf wish list, for me, it has to be Gale. So Gale for me is one of the most annoying brawlers within this meta. By no means I'm saying he's completely broken, but I feel like in the right setting on some game modes and maps, it's just so hard to face off against, specifically if you're a tank. I mean, that's a given, right? Because Gale is supposed to be good against tanks, but it starts to become a problem when brawlers like Gale, when they're a tank counter, start to be good against everything. Once he has his super, there's hardly any counterplay to it. You've also got his tornado gadget, 3 uses of it for 10 seconds. It just feels unstoppable once he gets that cycling of his supers. So there's a couple of ways he could go about this. The first one could just make it so your supercharge rate is nerfed a little bit, whether that's by the cycling of the supers, because I think you charge like 12% of your super when you actually connect it onto someone, or just by the main attack. Something needs to be nerfed in that category, because I feel like he's always got his super up, so something needs to change because he's so toxic. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think of my suggestions in the comment section below, and also who you wish to be buffed and who you wish to get nerfed as well. I feel like most of these are pretty much given. Of course, I didn't want to just do the standard like Edgar, Mr. P. These are brawlers that are pretty much known to be needing a buff, right? But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.